لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So, Barakallah fikum, Ramadan Kareem, for those who are beginning Ramadan this evening or tomorrow here in Cairo, starting Friday, tomorrow, inshallah. May Allah give you all a blessed Ramadan and a beneficial one, and one that will prove, inshallah, to be a emancipation from the hellfire and a gift to enter paradise with Allah Ta'ala. So as we stated, we intend, inshallah, to continue reading from Al-Fath al-Rabbani wa al-Rahmani till we finish the discourses, 62 of them. So we have done about half, or a little bit more than half. We're on the 33rd discourse, I believe. Or was it 32nd? 33rd, 32nd. So the Shaykh, as we have seen, emphasizes certain points in different ways repeatedly. And one of the main themes that we have seen throughout is this idea of the Zahir and the Batin, and Tasdiq al-Batin al-Zahir. So the outward and the inwards, and that how our outwards, our Zahir, should be Unwan al-Batin, should be in congruence and not have any dissonance between that which we are feeling and that which we claim and so forth. With our tongues, we should feel it in the inside. So he talks about nifaq and he talks about hypocrisy, and what he means in this context is hypocrisy of the batin, which means that our inner state is not commensurate with what we say outwardly. So when we say La ilaha illallah, there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that should mean that in all of my affairs, in all of my circumstances, I do not see another except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I do not see anything that's worthy of putting my trust, my consideration, my aspiration, my intentions, my motivations, except in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is amongst the ma'ani, the meanings of tawheed, not associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we'll see that also in this discourse, and I think we might be able to do two of them because they're both short, the 32nd and 33rd ones. So he says, رضي الله عنه, أدي الأمر وانتهي عن النهي واصبر على هذه الآفات وتقرب بالنوافل وقد سميت مستيقظا عاملا لطلب التوفيق من ربك عز وجل مع اجتهادك وترك تكلف الحضور باب العمل وهو المستعمل لك. سله وتذلل بين يديه حتى يهيئ لك أسباب الطاعة، فإنه إذا أرادك لأمر هيأك له، قد أمرك بالمسارعة من حيثك ويوجه إليه التوفيق من حيثه. الأمر ظاهر والتوفيق باطن، النهي عن المعاصي ظاهر والحمية عنها باطنة، بتوفيقه تتمسك وبحميته وعصمته تترك وبقوته تصبر. احضروا عندي بعقل وثبات ونية وعزيمة وإزاحة التهمة لي وحسن الظن فيه، وقد نفعكم ما أقول وفهمتم معاني. يا متهما لي غدا يتبين لك كل ما أنا فيه، لا تزاحمني فيما أنا عليه، قلبك ينقهر وتغلب، أثقال الدنيا على رأسي وأثقال الآخرة على قلبي وأثقال الحق عز وجل على سري، فهل لي من معاون. So he says, those of you who are following this page 206, carry out the divine commandment, observe the divine prohibition, be patient in the face of these hardships, and draw close to the Lord through supererogatory devotions and nawafil. You will then have a reputation for being alert and hardworking. Here the English doesn't come through, but he means fil mala' al-a'la, in the higher realm, not amongst people so much, but with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and al-malaika, right? We have Raqibun and Atid, we have the two angels who record all of our deeds, and so they also will see you in this sense, as well as being diligent and ready to make yourself available for work. Yani, here this concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and yasta'milaka. So we know that there's this ista'mal, we translate it as work, but it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sort of puts you to work for Him من حيث العناية الخاصة, right? From the aspect of a kind of a special interest, let's say, that He puts in you because He needs you to. No, He doesn't need you, but He chooses you to carry out certain things of إيصال الخير للآخرين, of bringing good to others. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He preserves this deen, as we've mentioned a few times before, by way of His servants. He chooses certain servants. So we've heard the names of some of, for example, the Qurra. Here we are in the month of the Quran. We all read a particular qira'ah. We all read a particular canonical recitation of the Quran. And these canonical recitations of the Quran have attached to them names of people who were instrumental in uh, preserving and transmitting and documenting these qira'at. So the 7 or 10 Quran reciters, and then they have 2 rawis, they have 2 reciters amongst them. So they include Hafs and Nafa and Abu Amr al-Dani and others. These are names of people, but they're also people by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to transmit and preserve this deen, just like we talked earlier about the 4 fuqaha, the 4 mujtahid imams, Abu Hanifa and Malik wa Shafi'i wa Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Allah chose them. So ista'malahum, right? So He put them, He utilized them لإيصال الخير الآخرين, to bring good to others. And then there are the many people who use their wealth to bring good to others. So the institutions that have been established, whether they are hospitals or masajid, mosques, institutions of learning. One of the things I believe is that hospitals were included in the waqf structure, what they used to call in Maristan. So they were generally not private enterprises, but they were something that was supported by endowments. So pretty much every citizen of the Muslim state or country should be entitled to free healthcare that would be supported by the endowments, much in the same way that educational institutions also did not take tuition from people. This was something also supported by endowments. So things that were, or awqaf, things that were for the betterment of the individual and development of the individual, that also would enrich the community, enrich society. Uh, the very strong, let's call it, civil infrastructure of pre-modern Muslim communities took it upon themselves to properly fund these places and to ensure that they would remain operational by way of endowment. So the endowment would be perpetual, for the most part. When an endowment is founded, when a waqf is founded, the intention behind it is that it's that's for perpetual use. So not for a few years or a few months or a few weeks, but something that would have a consistent yield, or return on investment that would come back every year. That would be at the disposable of the waqf for the endowment and then the people who run the endowment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can put you in a place and يستعملك في الخير. And it doesn't have to be something as quite as public as running a masjid or an orphanage or a school or anything like that. It could be within your community, within your family, within your small circle of friends. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يهيئك, يعني there's تهيئة, He prepares you because there's a certain mission that you need to be carrying out. And the number one mission that any of us need to carry out is that we want to bring people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the greatest service that you can do for them. The minimum service that you do for them is to do them no harm. So when you interact with people, that you don't leave them in a worse state than when they first met you or when they first interacted with you. At least they come out of that interaction not in a worse state. And that doesn't just mean physically, but it can mean emotionally and spiritually. You got in the face of the bank teller because you wanted hundreds and they gave you 50s, and then you started rambling on, and maybe that teller already was in a bad mood. Maybe they just got their pink slip, a couple hours before that they're going to lose their job, and they fuddled the change that they're giving you, and then you kind of act out on that. You've left them in a worse state than when they first met you. So minimum, لا ضرر ولا ضرار, that we don't do harm to people, and we even don't reciprocate their harm if they harm us. Also, that's part of dirar, reciprocating of harm. And then the second level is to bring good to them, إيصال الخير إليهم, whether it's dunyawi, good that's of the dunya, or good of the akhirah. Good of the dunya is you do some service for them, you help them, you even smile. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ibtisamuka fi wajhi akhika sadaqa." So smiling to your brother or your sister is a type of sadaqah, is a type of charity. Not that you only do it to people who are needy in that sense, but it is charity because you do it voluntarily, right? It's something that you do min shirah nafs, right? With a happiness and a surur and about it, and not because you feel like you have to. So that becomes a sadaqah, right? And huwa dalil ala sidq, and it's also indication of your level of sidq or sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you freely give of yourself, of your wealth, of your time. This is what they mean by insan sakhi or insan andu sakha. So sakha akhassu min al-karam. So this is another type of generosity in Arabic language that is even more specific than someone who is kareem. So sakha means it's like sifa da'ima. It's a constant state of theirs, and they're willing to give of anything that they have, that they possess, that they can give, even if it's just their time or to lend an ear to someone who needs to be heard. But the work that needs to be done before from our part is what the Shaykh is talking about here. So he says, as well as being diligent and ready to make yourself available for work. So that's what it's meant by that. Allah yani, He has things that needs to be carried out, just like He assigns the angels to do certain things. Jibril alayhi salam, Gabriel is the angel of wahi, of revelation, and Mikael is the angel of the natural phenomena and the mountains, and there's other angels and Israfil and Azrael, and they all have specific things. Munkar and Nakir, the two who asked the questions in the grave, and we mentioned Raqib and Atid. So they are assigned certain duties. And then there are the angels, the 70,000 that enter Bayt al-Ma'mur, which is directly above the Kaaba, Mala al-Ala, in the celestial realm, and 70,000 new angels enter and leave every day. So all of them have deeds and responsibilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts upon them. So human beings also can be assigned responsibilities by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they can say, He will prepare you for it, but you have to take the first step, right? And saying, Ya Allah, ista'minni. Ya Allah, I am ready to be at your disposal. So he said, as well as being diligent and ready to make yourself available for work, you must apply to your Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for helpful guidance, tawfiq, for it is this that will give you employment, right? In the manner that we said. Beg of Him and humble yourself before Him until He equips you with the means to perform obedient service, because if He wants you for some task, He will equip you for it. This is at-tahiyyah, right? He will prepare you, He will equip you, both outwardly and inwardly. Having ordered you to do your part by getting on with the job, He will do His part by directing helpful guidance toward you. The commandment comes from without, al-Zahir. So Allah says, If'alu, Sallu, Aqimu Salah, Zakku, A'tamaru, Hajju. All of those are commands. That is the Zahir. While the helpful guidance, at-Tawfiq, comes from the Batin. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huwa alladhi sayuwaffiquka. So if you are found doing obedience, then we say at-Tawfiq min Allah. Prophet said, فعلى لسان القرآن, وما توفيقي إلا بالله عليه توكلت وما توفيقي إلا بالله. And my tawfiq, my divine guidance or helpful guidance, as he translates it here, is only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will not have any other guidance or any other way of success except via Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. عليه توكلت وإليه أنيب. عليه توكلت. So He is the one that I will put my complete reliance upon, and He is the one who I will consistently return back to. Unib, right? So al-inaba akhassu min at-tawbah. So tawbah, repentance, means you made a mistake, you try to make amends for that mistake. Al-inaba, which is also means to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It means to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala min haythu al-islah. In other words, now you are returning to God to seek to rectify yourself. Not necessarily for a specific mistake that you made, but because of a realization that you need islah, right? That you need constant and consistent returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So realizing it's a state of the soul. So the commandment comes from without, al-zahir, while the tawfiq comes from the batin. The prohibition of sins is external, while protection against them is internal. So don't sin, don't make mistakes. Yes, the Quran and the Sunnah and the Sharia in general tells us that. But to be protected, in other words, what we call al-hifz, and takuna mahfuzan, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of gives you himaya, He gives you protection against easily falling into sin. Well, that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not something you can bring upon yourself. Your part is just to follow the commands and avoid the prohibitions as much as you can. Whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then puts you يعني مع أهل العناية وأهل الحماية, He puts you amongst those in their special kind of elite status, if you will, and hifz, and to preserve you from making mistakes. That's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not for you to assert that for yourself. You can seek it, you can ask Allah for it, but ultimately that's from Allah to you, not from you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from our side, we're just looking at, okay, don't do this and don't do that, and try to do this as much as I can, and put my trust and reliance only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and recognize that success only comes from Him. These are the ma'ani, these are the meanings that the believer should be kind of dwelling in throughout their existence. And this goes from the sinner to kibar al-awliya. So from the sinner even to the biggest of the awliya, this is their realm. What is my wajib? What is my obligatory thing to do now? And what are the things I need to stay away from now? So through His helpful guidance, you can hold fast. Through His protection and preservation, you can let go. And through His strength, you can exercise patience. Then the Shaykh says a couple of things about himself here, which I think is important. We should read that too. He said, "You must present yourselves to me with intelligence, firmness, intention, and determination, dispelling doubts about me and holding a good opinion of me. Then you may benefit from what I have to say and understand its meanings. All you who view me with suspicion, tomorrow will be clear to you what I am all about. Do not try to compete with me what I am up to. Your heart will be overwhelmed and defeated. The burdens of this world are on my head, the burdens of the hereafter are on my heart, and the burdens of al-haq, the truth, are on my innermost being, my sir." So what is he saying here? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so that we find benefit, and we find taraqi, to be raised and to be increased in our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the means by which He's done that is to be amongst people who have done that, to have the sahbah, the companionship of people who have walked that path already. And this is sunnah ilahiyya. So it's one of the sunnah al-kawniyya, you can call it. It's one of the sunnahs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instituted. And so we see whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the people to be guided, He sends to them a prophet, or He sends to them an heir of a prophet. So if you're living in a prophetic period, then you will find a prophet to do that for you. So people were living in the time of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus the son of Mary, that was their prophet and he was their guide. People were living in the time of Moses, Musa alayhi salam, that was their prophet, and he was their guide. People living in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last one, living at the same time as him, we call those people the Sahaba. So that is their guide. But then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam left behind this group of people who are going to carry on the meanings and the teachings that which he left. And you can say that's something unique to al-Ummah al-Muhammadiyya, something unique to the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because you find with the other prophets, that not long after, and what we mean by long, it could mean like 100 years or 200 years, their teachings became misconstrued or misrepresented, or حرف, يعني they were manipulated to mean something else, such as happened with Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, the son of Mary. He did not say, I am one of three. He did not say, I am a God. He did not say, I am the son of God. But yet, these are the things that were attributed to him within a few hundred years of him being raised to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But such, alhamdulillah, will never happen, has not happened on the scale of the ummah with our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ensured the preservation, the hifz of the dhikr, as we said, of the deen, and He has chosen people by which to do it. And if He has chosen people by which to do it, then in order for us to derive benefit from these people, we have to hold a good opinion of them. That doesn't mean they're infallible. It doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean they're not prone to making mistakes. They can, and they might, and they actually will. But if we treat them with ever-present suspicion, right? What he calls here tuhma, an accusation, and we are kind of waiting to knock them down and waiting for them to make a mistake, then this is actually a very, very dangerous, sets a dangerous precedent for our practice of the deen. Because if we knock down our ulama, and we're not saying they're infallible, they make mistakes, but if we take it as a manhaj, right, as a methodology that somehow we don't need any of them, and they get in the way, and there's some sort of clerical class that just seek to hold on to power and control us, as has been the narrative in some places. And I'm not saying that some people don't do that, some people do that. But to say that's true about all of them in general, that's a grave mistake. So in order to derive benefit from somebody, you need to have a good opinion of them. And you need to have a good opinion of everybody anyway, but especially of the people that you're going to benefit from. If you don't hold a good opinion of them, it'll be very hard for you to benefit from anything that they have to say. If you have something in your heart that feels like they're not being truthful, they're not being sincere in how they're saying it, there's some level of hypocrisy, then your ability to benefit from that person kind of ends there. And that doesn't mean there is something necessarily wrong with them, something necessarily wrong with you, but it means that particular relationship, the way it is now, it's going to be difficult for you to benefit. So that's why the Sheikh is saying, I'm not interested in anything that you have. I don't need anything from you. I'm saying this because I feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me a mission to do, and I need to do it. And we mentioned about Shaykh Abd that he left Baghdad and he didn't want to do this anymore at all. And he was out, when you go to the Sahara, go to the desert in Iraq and just live, by himself, isolated, and go from town to town, perhaps what they used to call siyaha. So not siyaha in the modern sense that you're, taking Norwegian cruise lines, but siyaha in the sense that you to siyah fil ard, to see what's going on with different peoples and communities, and even sometimes by yourself. So this was like a kind of physical, spiritual wayfaring. So he was about to do that, and then, as we said, he heard a hatif, a voice, say to him, said, "Where are you going? You have something to do." And he said, "Well, yeah, but I have to preserve my deen. I don't want to be in a place where there's people who have nifaq and they're lying and trickery and machinations and all that sort of thing." And then the voice said to him, his inner voice, his sir, that Allah spoke to directly, "Well, the preservation of your deen is in going back to them. You specifically, who have been given a mission by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve your deen, you have to be amongst the people." And so he's telling them, I'm not interested in whatever it is you think that I'm interested in that you have. There's nothing that interests me. And that's how the awliya are. They'd much rather be doing their own tilawah of Quran and reading their own awrad, and rather than listening to people's problems and their issues and things like that. But they come back and they're with us because they feel that they have been tasked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do this. So let's move on. Maybe just one thing I want over here. to the next one. I think that's, let's go on to the next 33rd discourse. So I think that's kind of the main message of that one. We read from the beginning because it's directly about what we just talked about. So this is on page 209, those who are following. He says, first in Arabic, قال الله تعالى يوم الأحد من رأى محبا لله عز وجل فقد رأى من رأى الله عز وجل بقلبه دخل عليه سره ربنا عز وجل شيء موجود مرئي قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم سترون ربكم كما ترون الشمس والقمر لا تضامون في رؤيته يرى اليوم بأعين القلوب وغدا بأعين الرؤوس ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير المحبون له رضوا به دون غيره استعانوا به واقتصروا عمن سواه صارت مرارة الفقر عندهم حلاوة والفقر من الدنيا عندهم والرضا به عندهم والتنعيم به عندهم غناهم في فقرهم نعيمهم في أسقامهم أنسهم في وحشتهم وقربهم في بعدهم راحتهم في تعبهم طوبى لكم يا صبر يا رادون أو شبه راضون يا فانون عن نفوسهم وأهويتهم يا قوم وافقوه وارضوا بأفعاله فيكم وفي غيركم لا تتعالوا وتتمعلقوا على من هو أعقل منكم قال الله عز وجل الله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. So he says, to see one who loves Allah is to see one who has seen Allah with his heart, who has entered his presence with his innermost being, his sir. Our Lord Azza wa Jal is a visible entity. And we'll explain that in a second. As the Prophet ﷺ said, you will see your Lord as you see the sun and the moon, not disputing amongst yourselves the fact that you saw or that you see him. Today he is seen with the eyes of the hearts, tomorrow with the eyes in their heads. And then the verse in the Quran, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There's nothing like unto him, and he is the all-seeing, the all-hearing, the all-seeing. Those who love him are content with him to the exclusion of all others. To him alone they turn for help. For them the bitterness of poverty becomes the sweetness of doing without this lower world, of being content with him, enjoying affluence with him. Their wealth is in their poverty, their comfort in their affirmities, their friendship in their loneliness, their nearness in their remoteness, their relaxation in their weariness. How blessed are you, O patient ones, O contented ones, O you who pass beyond your lower selves, nufus, and your passionate desires, al-ahwiyah. So to see one who loves Allah is to see one who has seen Allah. And here he says, رؤية قلبية ليست رؤية عينية. So to see Allah with your heart, because you can't see him with your eyes. So Allah is visible, he means, and can be seen with your heart. How do you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your heart? You see that all of these are just athar. All of these are signs and indications and manifestations of, or what we call tajalliyat, divine manifestations of the divine names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of his knowledge, of his power, of his kalam. إنما إذا أراد شيئا أن يكون قال له كن فيكون. If he wants something to be, he says be, and it is. So these things are بين والكاف والنون. So everything is between the kaf and the noon. And when he says kun, so we can see that رؤية قلبية. Another word for this is called mushahada. تعبد الله كأنك تراه, right? The hadith, ihsan. What is ihsan? Worship Allah as if you see him. So why as if and not like you definitely see him? Because you can't see him with your eyes, but you see him with your heart. In the next life, there will be another type of vision, the beatific vision. سترون ربكم لا تضرون أو لا تضامون. You will not have any doubt about that you saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all, like you see the moon or like you see the sun. So not that you will see it with your physical eyes, you'll see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your physical eyes, but there will be no doubt about what you are seeing in a manner that's commensurate, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will create within us an ability to see Him in a way that we can't see Him in this life. That's why He said to Musa alayhi salam, لن تراني. When Musa asked him, أرني أنظر إليك. قال لن تراني ولكن انظر إلى جبلي فإن استقر مكانه فسوف تراني. He said, Allah, I want to see you. He said, لن تراني. You will not see me now, but look toward the mountain. If it stays in its place, then you will see me. But if you find it destroyed and completely reduced to rubble, then you will not see me. And then when Musa saw that, so he saw the tajalli. So it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directed him to not asking to see Allah in that physical sense, but to see the tajalliyat, to see the manifestation of Allah's power, which He did to the mountain. فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى لِلْجَبَلِ جَعَلَهُ دَكًّا وَخَرَّ مُوسَى صَاعِقًا. Right? فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى لِلْجَبَلِ is tajalli بالقوة, right? بالإرادة, بالعلم. It was gone. And then خَرَّ مُوسَى صَاعِقًا. And then Musa fell to the ground in prostration and said, تُبْتُ إِلَيْكَ. I make tawbah from you. Interestingly, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never asked to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not any riwayah that he asked to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But yet he was given that. في ليلة الإسراء والمعراج, on the night of Isra and Mi'raj, he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a manner that's commensurate with His majesty. So some of them said the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam هو صاحب تمكين وسيدنا موسى صاحب تلوين. Talween means from, going through different maqams and ahwal. So Musa alayhi salam was mulawwan on that particular instant when he said, أرني أنظر إليك. يعني أخذه الحال. يعني he was overtaken by a hal, a state. أما نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم فهو صاحب تمكين. Tamkeen means he's steady, right? He is thabit. The hal is not going to take him to ask something, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it to him even without asking. هذا صاحب تمكين. That's why we say هو خير خلق الله. He is the best of creation. We respect all of the prophets and messengers, but even the Quran says تلك الرسل فضلنا بعضهم على بعض منهم من كلم الله ورفع بعضهم درجات. These are the messengers that we have preferred some over others. Some of them spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or Allah spoke to them, and others we have raised in degrees. Who are the ones raised in degrees? Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فهو خير الأنبياء والرسل. He is the best of messengers and the best of prophets and the best of creation. Al-Itlaq, in an absolute sense. فهو صاحب تمكين. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he said in the discourse, today he is seen with the eyes of their hearts, tomorrow with the eyes in their heads. Right? In a manner, again, not based upon physical sight, yani bu'd, refraction of light and all that sort of thing, but in a manner that's different than just seeing him with your heart. How is that going to be exactly? Allahu a'lam. So those who love him are content with him to the exclusion of all others. So what does tawheed in love look like? Right? How is tawheed connected to mahabba? Because you take the word tawheed and then you apply it to all of the emotions or emotive states that we can possibly have. So it applies to love, it applies to hate, it applies to happiness, it applies to sadness, it applies to sorrow, it applies to joy. So tawheed here, in terms of mahabba, that you love him to the exclusion of all others. In other words, you don't love anyone like you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because even the person that you love the most in this dunya, there's a certain level of tolerance, and at some point certain things that they do, you just will not have it anymore. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single thing that comes to us, which is true about him all the time, from him to us, then we become contented with it, or we should strive to be contented with it. So to be contented with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also means to be contented with his decrees, to be contented with Allah. So how does this show itself? How does this tawheed manifest? To him alone they turn for help. For them the bitterness of poverty becomes the sweetness of doing without this lower world, because they see it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the bitterness من حيث الخلق. So the marara, the bitterness, comes because of how it is viewed and understood in the dunya. But from the divine perspective, it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a sweetness to it. Because that could also be dalil ala al-inaya. It could be an evidence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ja'alaka fi inayati al-khassah, that He's put you in His special inaya and consideration. Of being content with Him, everything, enjoying affluence with Him, yani al-ghina billah. Their wealth is in their poverty. So wealth, innama al-ghina ghina nafs, their wealth of soul is even if in the poverty of their hand. Their comfort in their affirmities, their friendship is in their loneliness, so they may feel lonely or detached from everything else besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when you become detached from everything besides Allah and attached to Him, there is no more loneliness. You feel you are with Allah. So this ma'iyya, al-ma'iyya ilahiyya, al-ma'iyya al-Rabbaniya, the one that the Prophet ﷺ reminded Abu Bakr as-Siddiq about, لا تحزن إن الله معنا, when they're in the cave, don't grieve, Allah is with us. So if you have some nasib, some allotment of this ma'iyya, of being with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that Allah is with you, there is no loneliness. Their nearness and their remoteness from al-khalq, so remoteness from people but nearness to God. And their relaxation and their weariness. They're weary from the dunya. Ad-dunya sijnul mu'min. The dunya is the prison of the believer, right? Because there's no itlaq, there's no saraha, there's no freedom in the sense of freedom of the soul, freedom of the spirit, freedom of the ruh. But if you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're not tied down by your attachment to the dunya, because the sijin is, the prison is your attachment to it. If you become detached from it and not that interested in it and indifferent to it, then you are free, then you are liberated, then you are not surrounded by the bars of the dunya, no matter, even if they're bars of gold and diamonds and precious stones, but nevertheless, you're in a prison. And once you become liberated from that, then you find relaxation or raha, because you have relieved yourself of the weariness of the dunya. That's why he said, how blessed are you, O patient ones, O contented ones, O you who pass beyond your lower selves and your passionate desires and your ahwiyah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.